Dinah McNichol, we ask, is Peter Tobin one of the most prolific serial killers of our time?
Other victims' families need to know what happened to their child.
Tonight, revealing new insights into Tobin's life, detectives ask for your help to uncover the truth.
Hello and welcome to Crimewatch for our last show of the year. In the past 12 months, over 130 wanted men and women, including paedophiles, murderers and drug dealers, have been arrested as a result of your calls. We'll have more details on some of those fantastic results later. But tonight we are joined by senior detectives from afar afield as Glasgow, Cardiff and Dorset, all hoping that in the next 60 minutes you'll help them solve a major crime. Like this case, the horrific murder of Tracy Martins, the mother of two who was burnt alive on the steps of a church at Christmas.
Oh my God! Oh no!
And Rav, who's in your sights tonight?
Well, I've got this lot on my Christmas wish list, and in some of the most truly disturbing CCTV footage that we've seen. Can you name the thug who started kicking off after the pub and then went on to attack a woman?
And I've got the unbelievable story of how countless museums, some of the world's leading art experts and even the Queen were duped by this man, Sean Greenhouse, an unemployed loner who created ancient masterpieces, all from his garden shed.
But first tonight, a man whose crimes have been featured on Crimewatch numerous times over the last 20 years. We now know that Peter Tobin is a serial killer who has spent his whole life targeting young girls to abduct, rape and murder. Well, the 63-year-old drifter was finally convicted last week of the murder of teenager Dinah McNichol, ending 18 years of uncertainty for her family. As Dinah's father, Ian, gives his first interview on television since the trial, detectives ask for your help to determine how many more victims have suffered at Tobin's hands. Rav joined the team on Operation Anagram, the nationwide investigation into the serial killer's crimes.
A convicted sex offender has been found guilty of raping and murdering a Polish student in Glasgow.
Peter Tobin has been charged with the murder of Vicky Hamilton, who went missing 16 years ago.
The serial killer, Peter Tobin, is convicted of another murder. 18-year-old Dinah McNichol went missing in Essex in 1991.
After all these years, we at last know the truth and justice has prevailed.
He will never get out of prison. He will stay there until he dies.
We now know at least 3 young women died in the most horrific circumstances at the hands of Peter Tobin. With speculation rife over how many more girls he's murdered, police need your help to establish whether Tobin is in fact one of the most prolific serial killers this country has ever seen.
Yes, he will rot in jail. I very much doubt he'll ever get out of jail. But you can't deny that sense of closure to any other victims' families. They need to know what happened to their child.
Operation Anagram is the largest investigation of its kind ever set up in the UK. For the last 3 years, detectives have painstakingly pieced together Tobin's life, looking for evidence that links him to or eliminates him from other crimes. It all began in September 2006.
Police investigating the disappearance of a Polish student in Glasgow say they expect a body which was found hidden in a church to be identified later today.
The missing student was last seen in the company of this man, 60-year-old Peter Tobin, who'd been working as a handyman at the church. He too has since disappeared.
A doctor in a London hospital recognised the wanted man as a patient who'd admitted himself under a false name days earlier.
Yeah, can I get a P&C descriptive check on a Peter Tobin?
The man has gone on trial in Edinburgh, accused of raping and murdering a Polish student.
Judge told Peter Tobin that he should serve a minimum of 21 years and described him as an evil man.
So, Dave, it was after the murder of Angelica that really started Operation Anagram. So why was it created?
We started looking, as we would do as a normal investigation, looking at the life of this individual. And in the early stages of that investigation, we established that this was an individual that travelled throughout the UK and used numerous names. He frequented places where vulnerable women would hang out and had as many as 20 SIM cards linked to his mobile phone within a year. So the suspicion at that time was, this is a guy that's done this before.
Detectives were right. Within months, Tobin was linked to the disappearance of 2 other young girls. In February 1991, 15-year-old Vicky Hamilton vanished from a bus stop in Bathgate near Edinburgh. It was one of the largest missing persons inquiries that Scotland had ever seen.
My colleagues in West Lothian are now gravely concerned for Vicky Hamilton.
Every day for 16 years we woke up thinking, is today the day we'll find Vicky? Is today the day we'll find she's been murdered?
It was only when detectives from Operation Anagram discovered Tobin had been living in Bathgate at the same time Vicky went missing that the shocking events surrounding her disappearance came to light. Tobin had abducted, drugged and sexually assaulted Vicky before murdering her. He then mutilated her body, transported her 500 miles to his new Margate home and buried the schoolgirl in his back garden. Within 6 months, another teenager had gone missing. 18-year-old Dinah McNichol disappeared on her way back home from a music festival in Hampshire.
That slim hope was always there. And I never changed the lock, just in case she would come back. But she never did.
It was nearly 2 decades before Ian McNichol was to find out what had happened to his daughter. The man who she'd hitched a lift with was Peter Tobin. Only he knows the horrors he subjected Dinah to before he murdered her. Tobin buried her next to Vicky.
You will only understand it if it ever happens to you or a member of your family. Then you will understand, and that's one thing I do not wish on anyone.
You can see behind you, this massive board is really what Operation Anagram is all about. This huge, great timeline. But there are these big purple blotches are areas that you don't know so much about him. And these are detailed on the board here. For example, 1977 to 78, 85 to 86. And you really want to know more about what he was up to back then.
The key is what he looked like throughout the years. People maybe looking at that recognise him as another individual. Or, more importantly, a bit of information about him. So this was an individual that could ingratiate himself with anyone. He was an affable type character. He had numerous girlfriends, numerous close friends, some of whom will probably not have come forward.
Unfortunately, I don't think Vicky was his first. As a sense of relief when you finally find out that, yes, this is what's happened. And even just to know that if a body has been missing, just to be able to bury it. I mean, there's no greater sense of closure than just to know that you've eventually done the right thing.
And people are still waiting to hear from about how their loved ones died, how their family have died. How many more?
How many more? Well, I'm joined by Detective Superintendent David Swindle, who is heading up this huge Operation Anagram. You're here tonight because you want to reveal more information about Peter Tobin, and you think that what we know and what he's been convicted for may not be the end of the story. Tell us more.
Yes, exactly. I mean, his offences, what he's done to these women in the past is horrific, and without doubt, he has probably committed more. And that is why it's important that the public come forward and supply any information about him.
Now, it's fair to say almost every force in the country is involved in this huge nationwide investigation. Tonight you want to reveal elements of his life that were not known to you and your fellow officers. Tell us what you know that's new about Peter Tobin and what he got up to. Yes, it is. It's a massive UK-wide operation, and information has been coming from various parts of the UK. And some recent information, very recent information, is the fact that he was using sex workers. And that itself may be something that people don't want to come forward about. OK, and there was also, he was a member of sort of biker gangs as a hobby? Gangs, yes, he was involved in biker gangs in his early days. Yes. OK, so we want to hear from anybody who might have just met him innocently in one of those biker gangs and something rings a bell. They could have a tiny piece of information. You have also put together this sort of, as well as the timeline, you've gathered a kind of photo album of pictures of Peter Tobin, which again might be important to people. Tell us about those. Yes, this is photos of Peter Tobin through his life, but
people might not know him as Peter Tobin. They might know him as some of the other aliases, and a lot of these aliases, the aliases that are on the board, are sort of combinations of his name, and he's taken the names of other people. So while the photographs are there, it may not be the name Tobin they know these photographs relating to.
OK, we've got the names on the board here. We've also got them on the website, so people can look for these known aliases there. Tell me also, David, about dates. There are a couple of periods that are important that you don't really have any information on so far.
Yes, 77, 78, late 85 and early, in fact, most of 1986. And what I would say is, these are important dates, but please don't focus on specifically these dates. It's small bits of information about Peter Tobin throughout his whole life we're interested in.
OK, and that's what helped in the past. You've brought some jewellery. Tell me why you think this might be important.
Well, the question has to be asked, why does a serial killer have women's jewellery? And this is jewellery we know that he had in his possession in 1993 and recently 2006. That is important, and we want to know where he got that jewellery from. OK, so people could recognise some of it really is very distinctive indeed, and we do know about serial killers keeping trophies, and the jewellery that you found is not linked to any of the crimes that he so far has been convicted of, and that's why it might be of interest if people can help you identify these pieces of jewellery. All of the new details, including the jewellery, including the aliases, including the photographs about Tobin's life, are on a specially dedicated section of our website tonight, together with the photos, the aliases, as I mentioned. Do take a look. If you have ever encountered Tobin, you could have that vital information that police need. You can call now 0500 600 600, or you could call the independent charity Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. I'll give you their number. It's 0800 555 111. David, for now, thank you very much. Now we're going to go over to Rav with the first of this month's Most Wanted.
And kicking things off tonight is Raouf Maridi, here, a bus driver from London. 3 weeks ago, he was found guilty of causing death by dangerous driving after his double-decker bus hit a tram, killing a passenger. He was sentenced to 4 years, but he's now gone on the run. Maridi is a French-Tunisian and could well be hiding in France. My number 2 here is Abdul Star Ismail, and he was charged with raping a young woman in Cardiff city centre 2 years ago, but failed to turn up at court and hasn't been seen since. As well as Wales, he has links to Oldham in Lancashire. Now, he's considered a danger to women, so if you see him, steer clear and just call police immediately. Next is this chap here, Ambrose O'Neill. Now, he was charged with an attempted robbery in 2007, but also did a bunk. He was found guilty in his absence and sentenced to 8 years. O'Neill grew up in Nottingham and also has family in Scotland. You might spot him at a church of all places, as he's been known to attend spiritualist meetings. And at number 4 here is Subhan Ullah, and he's wanted for setting up fake colleges to get illegal immigrants into the UK. He's originally from Pakistan and was only in Britain on a student visa himself. Ullah has links to Bradford, but could well have gone to ground in London. So if you know where Ullah, O'Neill or any of the others are hiding out tonight, pick up the phone now, 0500 600 600, or you can text us 63399, just type crime space and then your message, and it's important to leave that space, remember, or your message won't get through. And you can also check these mugshots out online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. And remember, all our most wanted stay on the website until they're caught.
Now, still to come, the Christmas tree sellers held hostage by armed robbers.
They put a gun to my head. Do you just think you're going to die?
Right enough. I know you've got money. I'll put a bullet in her head and I'll kill her.
Can you name the thugs who tried to kill in a deliberate hit and run?
And how, after decades, one of the most successful art forgers in British history was finally caught because of old-fashioned detective work and a wily professor.
When we looked, we discovered they'd been very clever and very crafty, and they nearly fooled us, but they didn't quite.
So all of that is still to come. Now, Christmas time can often be difficult for those of us who have lost a loved one. For the family in our next film, it is frankly agonising, because 15 years ago this month, their mum and sister Tracy was burnt alive and then left to die on the steps of a church just before Christmas Eve. It'd be fair to say that you may find some of the images in our film very disturbing.
Mother of two, Tracy Mertens, was taken to St Michael's Church in Eton, where 2 days before Christmas she was doused in petrol and then set on fire.
Congleton Parish Church. A petrol can lay nearby.
A day later, leaving 2 children.
Tracy met Joey when she was 16, and they seemed really happy. She loved him. Later on, it all seemed to fall apart.
The money is up to you. It's nothing to do with me.
Oh my! The children, that'll have been her main concern. She loved them 2 children. She did. I'm very proud of them.
It was 2 days before Christmas. Tracy, her partner Joey, and the 2 children were getting ready to experience their first Christmas in their new home in Rochdale. 5 weeks earlier, the family had left their old home in Birmingham. It's not clear why, although Joey, a habitual drugs user, admitted to owing people money at the time.
Dad, can I have a remote control car for Christmas? I mean, Darren's got one at school, it's really cool.
Daniel, we've just moved house. Just be thankful you've got a roof above your head. And just be thankful what you get on Christmas Day.
It just didn't feel like Christmas. No presents under the tree or anything, or things like that, but that was probably because we moved so quickly.
Joey.
What?
I'm going back to Birmingham. I'm going to pick up the benefits book.
What, leave me with the kids?
Yeah.
Well, how long are you going to be?
I'll be back tonight. They need some money for Christmas.
Quick as you can, then, eh?
On the night of the 22nd of December, Tracy headed back to the Midlands to collect some of their old belongings and cash their benefit books. She spent the night at her sister-in-law's house, and the next day she made her way to her old house in Cattle's Grove.
Where's Joey? Where is he? Where is he?
I don't know what you want!
Keep me there!
What are you doing? I don't know what you want!
Keep
Please,
quiet.
God, children!
Where is he?
I don't
Tell me! Right, coming with, come on!
Oh my God!
She described them as overweight, in their early 30s, with Brummie accents. On the back window was stuck a yellow cuddly toy. The men then drove an hour away to Congleton in Cheshire. During the journey, Tracy heard the men arguing in what we believe was probably patois, a Jamaican dialect.
Mum must have been scared. Not knowing what was going to happen or why.
Right, come on, move! Keep moving! Come on! Shoot off!
What happened next was truly shocking.
Oh my God, where are you taking me, please?
Hold up!
No! Oh, no! No, please! No! Please!
What's the matter?
I've been set by you. Please help me, God.
Ambulance can help you. Could you get an ambulance out to Eton Church? What's the trouble there? There's a girl that is naked, looks as if she's been set on fire.
Oh, my goodness.
Church.
Don't worry, we'll get somebody to you.
Tracy's injuries were absolutely horrific. She suffered burns to 95% of her body, and as a result, doctors struggled to find a blood vessel to administer medication. We found her shoe at the scene. It was so charred it looked like a piece of coal. Despite her critical condition, over the next 12 hours, Tracy used everything she had left to give us a full account of what happened. But in the early hours of Christmas Eve, Tracy died.
It was the worst day of my life. I remember just crumbling up on the floor in a heap. I feel so sorry for her, what she went through.
The happiest times of my life was with my mum. The memories I've got with her. Been through so much on my own and done so many things on my own when she should have been there.
This was a calculated, cold-hearted murder. Why would these men kidnap an ordinary mum of two, drive her over an hour away and then torture her by setting fire to her? Someone out there knows what happened. We now have DNA evidence we can use to eliminate any suspects. All we need are the names.
In life, you know, you love somebody so much. And I loved her so much. And I will do anything. And I just want somebody out there just to help us, anything.
I just think if she deserves to be at peace, be at rest, because I don't think she'll ever will be until these people are caught.
It's beyond horror. I'm joined by DCI Paul Bailey. The suffering must have been incredible. What do you think the motive was for the attack on this young mum of two?
We're now 15 years further on, and we still don't know the motive for this attack. What we do know is Tracy was completely innocent. The two men who forced their way into the home were looking for Joey Kavanagh, her partner. We know that when the couple left Birmingham, Joey had a drugs habit and he owed money to people.
The house in Birmingham that they had previously lived in was vandalised. Tell me about that. Is that connected?
Well, it certainly is connected. In the 5 weeks between the family leaving Birmingham and going back up to Rochdale and Tracy coming down to collect the benefit books, somebody had daubed death on a downstairs window at the address in Cattle's Grove. And we believe that that would have been seen by somebody. Somebody will have seen whoever did that. And we'd appeal to them to come forward.
Somebody will also have seen this car. It's a very, very distinctive car. Even for 15 years ago, there wouldn't have been many of these around. Describe it to us again.
It's a very tatty Mark II canary yellow Ford Escort. It was seen in and around the Eton area, but we think people will still remember it because of the horrific nature of the murder.
Okay, and it had this cuddly toy, sort of, which was almost matched the car in terms of its colour. Who are you appealing to tonight? Because as we said in the film, somebody out there knows, and you've got the DNA, so they should give the names.
They should give the names. We'll be able to eliminate individuals. One specific appeal we'd like to make is shortly after Tracy's death, another couple who owed money for drugs received a very specific threat that if they didn't pay up, they would get what Tracy Merton's got, and would appeal to anybody else who had such specific threats made to them to come forward.
For Tracy's family, we've got to get to the bottom of this. Please, thank you, Paul, if you know anything that could bring Tracy's killer to justice, I would beg you to do the right thing. That is to pick up the phone now. I should tell you, there's a huge reward on offer, £30,000, if you have got the information that will lead to an arrest and a conviction. I'm going to give you the number now. Write it down. 0500 600 600. If you've been a victim of crime, there is, of course, the victim support line. They are on 0845 30 30 900. For now, here's Rav with some more of his most wanted.
Right, at number 5 is Mark Pong Slater. He's wanted for escaping from prison in Derbyshire last year, where he was serving 12 years for importing drugs. Since disappearing, Pong Slater has been up to his old tricks, dealing in cocaine in Leeds. He uses the names Mark Pang Slater, Mark Thomas, and the street name of Pang. And he has links to Lewisham in south-east London. Next here is Zhu Wei Fan, a former bank clerk at Barclays, but he's not Employee of the Month after nicking £1.5 million from them. He was charged but failed to turn up at court and was sentenced to 5.5 years in his absence. He's originally from China but has links to Reading. 7 here is Jason Elton John Waller. Yeah, you heard me, not to be confused with the great man himself. Waller needs finding fast because he is a convicted child sex offender and has recently broken the conditions of his release. Waller's lived all over the country, including Devon, Kent and Wales. He speaks with a West Country accent and was last seen sporting a moustache and a beard. And finally, here at number 8 is Imtiaz Hussain, and he was due to be deported last month, having done time for rape and false imprisonment. But he escaped from the Pakistani High Commission in Knightsbridge. He has contacts in the East Midlands and Manchester, and he's a nasty piece of work. So if you see him, keep well away and just call police immediately. So come on, do you know where any of this lot are tonight? Don't wait, call us here in the studio, 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399, just type crime, space, and then your message. Don't forget to leave that space, or your message won't get through. And we have more wanted faces on our website, where you can also sign up for regular updates, and that's bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
I should tell you, we're getting loads of calls on Peter Tobin, which is great. We've had plenty of information about some of that jewellery being linked to the military, so we don't need any more calls on that. Other information, though, keep calling. Now, 18-year-old Aaron Hoff here is very lucky to be alive. 3 months ago, he was on his way home from a night out when he became the victim of a deliberate and malicious hit and run.
I've lived in Gallycommon all my life. I've grown up with all my mates around this area. We go out all the time, go out down the park, play football, have a good laugh really.
Aaron's a likeable lad. You know, we're proud of him. He certainly likes a good time with his friends. He loves to play football, whether it's just down the park or in the football team or getting a game on a Sunday morning. He's gone on to play for the county and the district.
It was Friday evening and it was quite early, it was about 8:30. We went up the plough, had a few beers, had a few games pool. Just a normal evening. When we come out of the park, it was probably just gone past midnight, and we were just walking home like we do normally.
Hey, do you want to go then? No, I'm going home. Go in.
As we walked out, there was 2 girls in front of us.
Straight over. Hey, hello.
Shut
Oh, man. I'm going to go for you. Better look next time, yeah.
We didn't take much notice of the girls. We didn't even speak to them after that.
Get in!
And I looked up and I just seen the car lights. We were still laughing and joking. Just a split second, in other words, because I didn't know if it was a joke. I remember lying on the ground and I couldn't breathe at first. I was like really scared and I thought I was paralysed or something. It's my left tibia that's broke and there's like a crack like halfway down the bone, which is open, just where it's like splintered from the impact of the car.
When we initially saw him, it was total shock after I found out what had happened. I just couldn't grasp You know, how somebody could do that to somebody.
We could have died. All four of us could have died.
He might not be here now if he hadn't probably jumped on impact. I mean, he could have hit the windscreen, you know, anything could have happened. It's pretty horrendous that somebody could do that, I think.
Well, I'm joined by DC Jenny Fallon. Entirely unprovoked, this.
This whole incident is malicious, it's completely unprovoked. The driver has deliberately mounted the curb and driven directly at Aaron and his friends. He's accelerated towards them and clearly not even thought twice about the consequences, which could have been fatal.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's got a horrible injury, but not just one of them could have been killed. A lot of them could have been killed.
Yeah, all four of them quite easily. I mean, Aaron has been lucky under the circumstances. He has got a nasty break to his left leg, which has been in cast for the past 13 weeks. And it's showing little signs of healing. It's very nasty.
I don't know if you'll be able to tell me this, but do you think the guys were local, the guys in the car?
We don't know. It's possible they were local. We've done extensive inquiries into local vehicles. All that we do know is that the vehicle involved is a white Vauxhall Corsa. It is distinctive. It's got a very distinctive body kit and possible damage to the front near side where it's obviously collided with Aaron. So it is possible that it's identifiable to somebody at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's a distinctive car. What about these girls in the back? I mean, entirely innocent, but really important.
Really important. I mean, the girls, we think, are around 16 years old, completely innocent, didn't know that obviously this was going to happen. They've got in the car, but they may well be very frightened, but they need to come forward. They know who's responsible and they don't need to be worried. They need to come forward and speak to us.
Jenny, for now, thanks very much. If you've got any information, do call us here in the studio. Let me give you the number, 0500 600 600, or you could call Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously, 0800 555 111. Now it's over to Rav with some criminals caught on camera.
Some of the most disturbing images we've seen are on this month's CCTV. We're in Canterbury, Kent, back in September, and this elderly lady is paying for the car park after a spot of shopping. But who's this lurking in the background? Don't be shy, mate. Danny DeVito. Can I have your autograph, please? Wait a minute, something's not right here. He's part of a double act. Joined by a mate, they loiter near our shopper. One of them chucks cash on the floor, and while the victim picks it up, our Danny double helps himself to her purse. They'd followed the OAP for over an hour before pouncing, and it's not the first time they're believed to have struck. It's certainly some performance, but it won't be winning him an Oscar anytime soon. Thieving from a pensioner. How low can you get? Time this duo got recognised for their work. Who are they? And who's this woman? Is she also in on the act, or just an innocent passerby? More shopping, this time in St Albans in Hertfordshire, back in October. These two are after some designer jeans, and they could certainly do with them, or at least a new belt. Nice pants. The sales assistant comes over to help, but they have no intention of paying. After pretending to have a look around, they snatch as many pairs of jeans as they can carry and head for the exit. As the staff try to stop them, they pull out a knife and do a runner with 12 grand's worth of designer gear. Luckily for us, they might have an eye for expensive clothes, but they couldn't spot this camera. Give us a smile. They carry a weapon. Who knows what could happen next time? Don't give them the chance and shop them this Christmas. Saturday night in Burton-upon-Trent last July. A brawl has begun outside this pool club. It's hard to see who's not throwing punches, but it's this bloke that police need you to name. He rains down punches on one lad and stamps on another's head, but that's nothing compared to his final act. Grabbing hold of this girl, he smacks her with all his might. It's a shocking attack. The girl falls like a rag doll to the floor. She didn't stand a chance. It's a violent and unprovoked attack on a defenceless young girl. Don't let him lash out again. Thankfully, she's recovered. but we've got to catch that man tonight. So pick up the phone now, 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime space and then your message. And if you need a second look, go online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
Now, every Christmas for the last 20 years, Leslie and Graham Eaton have sold Christmas trees in Dorset. It can be hard work in bitterly cold weather, but it's the couple's favourite time of year and their business is thriving. The events of last Christmas, though, turned everything upside down. You see, the Eatons were targeted by a gang of armed robbers, and if it hadn't been for Leslie's courage and quick thinking, they might not have lived to tell the tale.
Leslie, I'm just going to put this with the other 7-footers.
That's great. Well, that's a beauty, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've been selling Christmas trees for about 20 years, but here we've had a retail outlet for about 8 years.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Looking for a tree? Yep. You know what sort of size you want?
The end of November up until about the 20th of December, really busy time here. We don't stop.
It's lovely, that one, isn't it?
We put our display boards up out on the road, and the public, you know, obviously see it and just come in.
We enjoy it. It's very Christmassy and it's a nice atmosphere. I was sitting on the settee watching the telly. We heard a loud thud.
What was that?
I'm sure. I'll go and look. Nothing there that I could see.
Sat back in the chair and I sort of didn't even give a second thought. The second loud bang was about 10:15. As I got out of the chair, there was 3 blokes stood in front of me, dressed completely in black. The one in the middle just put a gun in my face.
Where's the money? Where's the money?
What money? We haven't got any money.
We will put a bullet in her head unless you tell us where the money is.
OK, the only money I've got is in the kitchen.
No! Oh! Ah! Oh.
Where's the rest of the money?
That's all the money we've got. Oh. Oh.
My biggest fear they were going to hurt Leslie.
Oh. Oh. Oh, look at your head, Graham. Oh, my God!
What we're going to do next will be much worse.
They put a gun to my head. You just think you're going to die.
Right enough. I know you've got money. I'll put a bullet in her head and I'll kill her. I don't care. I'm going back to London. I'm out of the way.
Leave her alone.
We haven't got any money. If we had, we'd give it to you.
Don't look at me.
When he cut the flex off the hairdryer, I just thought, they're going to electrocute me.
I can't breathe.
And I was sort of crying, and I just thought I'd take it one step further, and I started breathing really heavily and puffing and going, you know, my heart's really tight.
My wife has a heart condition. Don't let her die.
When Leslie went making out she was dying or having a heart attack, I knew what she was doing.
They obviously really believed me. They believed that I was going to have, you know, I did have a heart condition.
They're gone.
It's not so much the money, it's what they put us through and the violence they used, really.
I know it's a year, but sometimes, you know, talking about it, we just want to get them caught, really.
DCI Michael Mullen is with me. You're having to investigate the case. Really terrifying attack for this couple.
Yeah, what makes this worse is the fact that this happened in Mr. and Mrs. Eaton's own home.
Yeah.
And for their peace of mind, it's really important that we try and catch these 3 men.
It's pretty clear to you and your team that this was a targeted attack.
Yeah, I believe it was a targeted attack. Their business is very remote. They don't generally advertise to the public. And whilst their offenders suggested they were from London, we think that's a bit of a red herring, and we'd appealed to the local community, particularly in Dorset, to try and help us find out who's responsible for this.
The roads that run around, Michael, the property are pretty quiet, the public roads there. So there are some vehicles that stand out for you that you want to trace. Take us through them, starting with this blue truck.
That's absolutely right. About 7 days prior to the incident, a pale blue Mercedes pickup truck was seen at the address. It It had a grey Land Rover on the back of it, and it was quite a noisy vehicle. We think it was Y, A, B or C registered. It had 2 white males on board, a mixed race male on board. We think this might have been the gang doing a bit of a recce, but we're really keen to identify this truck and at least try and eliminate it.
OK, and there's a car, it's a Ford Focus, the car.
That's right. On the day of the incident, a Ford Focus was seen on 2 occasions. Once between 10 a.m. and 12 a.m. in the Candy Lane area, and again at 6:30 p.m. about a quarter of a mile away from Mr. and Mrs. Eaton's home address.
OK, and an E-Fit too. Describe this bloke to us.
Yes, there is. He's a male, he's white, he's 40 to 50 years old, he's got dark hair, he was wearing a green tweed jacket, and most significantly, he was 24 to 25 stone. So we'd be really keen again to identify this gentleman and again try and eliminate him from our inquiries.
OK, Michael, for now, thanks very much. This gang are clearly dangerous. They do need to be caught. Tonight, you can call or text us now. There are the numbers on the screen, 0500 600 600. The text number 63399. Now, here are Rav and Matthew with some fantastic pieces of news on previous cases.
First news on a case that made headlines today. It was the first ever appeal on Crimewatch. The brutal murder of 16-year-old Colette Aram.
We start with a case that's chilling. Somewhere, probably in the English Midlands, there's a killer on the loose.
Colette was found sexually assaulted and strangled in a field near her home in Keyworth in Nottinghamshire. But despite a massive manhunt, the case has remained unsolved all these years until now. Following advances in DNA, 51-year-old Paul Stewart Hutchinson, a married father of 3, was charged with her murder. And earlier today, he finally admitted killing Colette. He'll be sentenced in the new year.
Next, a case which has spanned nearly 2 decades and been on the programme more times than any other appeal. It's the hunt for the so-called night stalker wanted for attacking elderly people in south-east London. Well, earlier this month, a 57-year-old man from Brockley in South London was charged with 22 counts of rape, indecent assault and burglary. The case goes to trial next year and we'll keep you updated.
Earlier this year, we reconstructed the murder of 3-year-old Francesca Bimpson. Just before Christmas, an arsonist targeted her family home. We had a fantastic response on the night of our appeal, and one caller gave police crucial information. Well, great news. A fortnight ago, Francesca's killer was brought to justice. Graham Heaps, a 44-year-old from Liverpool, was convicted of the little girl's murder and sentenced to life. We asked Francesca's father and brother Kieran what this has meant for them.
It does make it easier for the family, and we know that he's not living a normal life and he hasn't got happiness because he's in jail for 28 years.
There was quite an overwhelming response, and we were made up that people had come forward. Your faith in human nature's reignited, if you like. I'd like to appeal to the viewers of the programme, if they do know anything about past or present crimes, to come forward with information.
Francesca's family have now set up a campaign to help other victims in similar circumstances. Details are on our website.
And finally, last month, we re-appealed for information about the murder of the Birmingham taxi driver and father of 3, Mohammed Arshad, who was found stabbed in the head last July. We showed you CCTV of a man police wanted to speak to about the murder. But we had a great response with several names put forward. As a direct result of one of those calls, a 27-year-old man has now been charged with murder.
Now, take a look at these beautiful works of art. They're just a few pieces from a vast collection of paintings, ancient stone carvings and historical tablets, soon to be seen on display at the V&A Museum. They've been admired by art lovers, experts from across the globe and even Her Majesty the Queen. But they're all fakes, created by one man, Sean Greenhouse, and incredibly, all in his garden shed. Matthew takes up the story of how one of the most prolific forgers in history was finally caught.
Over a period of nearly 20 years, Sean Greenhalgh managed to pull off one of the most elaborate art scams in recent history. Fooling many of the world's leading experts and auction houses from London to New York, this master forger became the focus of one of Scotland Yard's longest-running fraud investigations.
In 1989, Greenhalgh was a 29-year-old frustrated artist living in Bolton. He had no job and was claiming state benefits. He was still living in the same house in which he was born and shared a room with his mum, aunt and brother.
Sean was a very good artist, but he wasn't getting the price that he felt he deserved for the artwork he was creating. He began copying and forging other people's artwork.
Sean trawled through art books to find items that were lost in history. He used everything from a Black & Decker drill to alabaster and Roman glass to create his masterpieces from his workshop, a shed at the bottom of his garden.
He created works by Lowry, Moran, antiquities he could create. He could turn his hand to anything.
With a range of completed fakes, Sean was ready to make some money.
Now all he needed was someone to sell them, and he didn't look far. Unbelievably, he chose his mother and father, even though they were both pensioners. The plan was to approach galleries and museums, passing off the forgeries as family heirlooms. But surely, no one would fall for that.
But they hadn't counted on George, Sean's father, who had the gift of the gab.
At home for a while. This is very interesting. It was my granddad's originally, and I just thought it might be worth a bob or two. This is a very old piece. I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
And the stories became more and more elaborate.
Later that year, his father George approached experts at Manchester University, claiming he'd found a piece of lost Saxon artwork.
George created a story about the piece, stating that inside was a piece of the true cross, the cross from Jerusalem on which Jesus had been crucified.
But before a museum acquires a piece of artwork, it needs to be verified by a number of experts.
The piece was examined by the museum, and they couldn't establish the authenticity of the wood, and eventually it was decided it was a fake.
Despite the Saxon artefact being uncovered as a forgery, they managed to flog it to a private dealer for £100. This first sale, however modest, would start a chain of events that would last 17 years and earn the Greenhalghs hundreds of thousands of pounds.
The family began selling to some of the country's finest auction houses. Christie's and Bonhams were both contacted by the unlikely team as the fakes became more sophisticated.
As Sean's forgeries became more advanced, so did the lies surrounding them. He began to buy old catalogues, old documents describing the items that were lost in history. They began to create the items from the descriptions in these catalogues.
Over the next 4 years, the Greenhalghs sold scores of fakes. Then, in 2003, they pulled off their biggest coup yet. Sean's father managed to convince experts at Bolton Museum that a sculpture his son had knocked up in 3 weeks was in fact an ancient Egyptian artefact, the Amarna princess.
He claimed that he'd inherited it from his great-grandfather, who'd been a mill owner in Somerset, and that he in turn had bought it at a sale in the late 1890s.
After receiving a government grant, the museum paid them over £400,000 for the fake Amarna princess.
And not only did it manage to dupe 6 out of 7 of the world's experts, it also fooled thousands of visitors, including the Queen.
You can't get away from the fact that, fake or not, it was a very beautiful piece of statuary. And we had a lot of researchers and scholars come also, as well as visitors who just came as part of a museum visit.
High on the success from the Egyptian princess, Sean then tried something even more audacious. He turned his hand to ornate Assyrian carvings, and he set his sights on one of the most prestigious institutions in the country, the British Museum.
The Greenhalghs first came on our radar, so to speak, a couple of years ago or more. I can't remember exactly, when they brought some of their work to the department. 3 big pieces of Assyrian sculpture arrived at the British Museum, and we all rushed down to have a look at them.
But the stone used to make the tablets wasn't from ancient Mesopotamia, but actually from a stonemason in Wiltshire and carved by Sean in his shed.
To reinforce their story, they purchased an old catalogue from 1892. In the catalogue, there were descriptions of 3 stone reliefs, and they recreated those reliefs based upon what was in the catalogue.
This time, the forgers were set to make $500,000. They must have thought they'd got away with it again, but they hadn't banked on expert Irving Finkel.
Sometimes these sculptures have a kind of caption when they show a scene, and the ancient Assyrian writing is a label underneath which tells you what it's about. And when I focused on the writing, that was the compelling thing, because there were 3 or 4 characteristics about this so-called ancient inscription which were very bizarre. And that meant that the whole sculpture was doubtful, and they were condemned as forgeries.
In 2006, Scotland Yard's Art and Antiques Unit began to investigate the Greenhouches. What they found was a record of numerous forgery allegations spanning back over 2 decades.
When we began looking at the Greenhouse family, we found what appeared on the face of it to be a very normal family. But we then began to contact museums and auction houses throughout the country, and we identified that a number of them had already had dealings with the Greenhouse family and already had concerns about some of the items that they'd brought in. After a period of time, we began to realise that they were using a number of names, alias addresses, and they were actually running quite a sophisticated forgery operation.
Within months, officers went to arrest Sean.
Mr. Greenhouse, with police officer with warrant to search these premises.
Amazingly, although he had nearly £400,000 in his bank account, Sean was still sharing the same council house in Bolton with his parents.
What are you doing?
Good morning, madam. I'm a police officer.
You can't come
I have a
here.
search warrant to search your property for works of art and antiquities.
Wait a minute.
Who's this? Who's this?
You can't just come in here like that. Get out of that wardrobe. There's nothing there for you. Who is this?
Every room appeared to have items of artwork or documentation which related to the artwork that they'd sold. It was an Aladdin's cave of evidence.
Sean, I want to ask you some questions about some fake works of art. In particular, the Amarna Princess.
Throughout questioning, Sean and his parents maintained they'd inherited the artwork from various family members, and they were unaware they were fakes. As many of these people had died, it made it difficult to prove the case against them.
If I can move on now to the Silverton Park catalogue.
The crucial turning point for the investigation for us was the finding of a receipt which indicated that the 1892 Silverton Park catalogue, which they'd said had been handed down to them by their great-grandfather, had in fact been purchased from a lady in Bristol in 1999.
On the 16th of November 2007, the 18-month investigation finally came to a close. Sean was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. His mother and father were given a 12-month suspended sentence. They were ordered to pay back £404,000 to Bolton Museum, Sotheby's and the Henry Moore Institute.
So what was it all about? Was Sean's sole aim in life to make a mug of the art world's most respected experts?
The clever thing about these people is they produce things that, in a way, we were looking for already. So when we saw it, we wanted to embrace this long-lost treasure, and then when we looked, we discovered they'd been very clever and very crafty, and they nearly fooled us, but they didn't quite.
The Greenhouse family appeared to believe that they could just carry on forging artwork, and they just didn't believe they'd get caught. There's no doubt that Sean was the most gifted and diverse art forger that we've ever dealt with. When he eventually got caught, after 17 years, it was a very satisfying moment.
What a tale. We've been poring over these all afternoon. They are absolutely beautiful, each in their own way, but how good are they as fakes?
They are absolutely stunning, and the reason the fraud was so convincing was the meticulous research. They researched everything. The materials, first of all, the stone, the metal. This, for example, was supposed to be the first Roman silver ever found in the UK. He made it by melting down hundreds of Roman coins, just in case they dated and checked the authenticity of it. He also researched the paperwork, the history, which was crucial. They even researched the experts themselves, read everything they'd written
written especially about lost artwork and the descriptions. They then made the art, wrote to the experts saying, is this interesting? And they would think, bingo, we're halfway there.
Crafty. I mean, he doubtless is a master craftsman. They are beautiful works of art, but he was not a master criminal. He made mistakes.
He made mistakes. Not everything was as good as the Amarna princess that you see there. I mean, that fooled experts around the world.
Yeah.
The Assyrian carvings, for example, they were tiny mistakes, but obvious mistakes. He had a detailed knowledge, but that wasn't always enough.
I mentioned them being exhibited at the V&A at the beginning. Why is that?
Well, all of this stuff is going to be on exhibition at the V&A in London next month. It's an exhibition about art fraud. The bigger headache, though, for the authorities is getting the rest of the stuff. I mean, he was prolific. He started this in 1989, but was churning it out. And a lot of it's gone abroad, but they think they've only found a third of everything actually made.
Good God. A few red faces about this?
Quite a few red faces, quite a few changes as well. Probably the most important is the setting up of a museum security group, and that's to share information amongst the museums, share concerns, and the hope would be that a scam on this scale wouldn't now be able to happen.
Compelling tale. Now, here's Rav with a quick roundup of what's been happening on the phones tonight.
We've had lots of calls in on Peter Tobin, talking about to the anagram team. They're saying it's those small pieces of information that could be those missing pieces of the jigsaw. So they are very encouraged with tonight's response. But no more on the military insignia that we showed you earlier. There are more items that were taken from Tobin online, so please check those out and see if you can help us. And very quickly, the Christmas cold case. Tracy Mertens, who was kidnapped and burnt alive. Some good calls come in. Some info on the car, but we need more calls and names, please.
Right, that's all for this year. Details on all of tonight's cases are online, of course. It's bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. You can log on right now for a live update on what's happening right here on the phones. I get the feeling it's been a particularly busy night. The lines are open until midnight tonight and from 7:30 tomorrow morning. Our next programme, that's going to be on Wednesday, the 27th of January, but don't go away because we're going to be back at 11:30 with a full update on all of tonight's cases. Please do hang on for that, and I have a feeling we're going to get some good results tonight. If you can help, but you haven't called yet, please do it now. It could all be down to you. I'll see you at 11:30. For now, from me and all the Crimewatch team, happy Christmas. Bye-bye.
And indeed here in Northern Ireland, Crimewatch Update is at 20.